Welcome to Relationships Through the Looking Glass. While here in Wonderland, we're going to discuss topics and share stories to help clear up distorted views of relationships. We provide a safe place for balance and honest conversation. While each episode can help all who listen, the focus will be on the community of color. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation. Hey everybody, welcome to Season 3, Episode 1 of Relationships Through the Looking Glass. So we're back. We're back with a whole new crew. Well, not all new. One new crew member and a bunch of topics that we're going to be focused on. So if you hadn't listened to any of the in-betweens, then you probably haven't heard the new crew member yet, which I'm going to introduce shortly. Just felt like we needed to add a male to the mix, so we found one and we added him. Now, how long he lasts, we'll see. We'll see. That's still yet to be determined, but he's here for today. So, Chris, go ahead and let people know who you are, where you are, and why you think you're going to be a good addition to the cast.
Yeah, hey, I'm Chris, where I'm at. I've started off with the BYOB lifestyle. That's all, just build your own body, build your own brand, be your own boss. I'm just working on that. I'm getting ready to launch that. I've got a couple of things that I'm getting ready to release with that. You can find me on Instagram at BYOB_lifestyle. But I think, I should be hopefully I'm a good addition to the crew. I know we've had different conversations here and there, talking about stuff, and hopefully my perspectives aren't too much for everyone, but also learning a lot from you gals as well has helped me out and hopefully help me out in the future. And hopefully I can help the three of y'all out and help out anybody else that's listening as well.
All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. All right. So Nicole, lovely Nicole, tell us how you been. How was your holidays? And, what you looking forward to in this season?
Hello, everybody. Glad to be back together. The holidays were very good, spent with family. So that's always exciting. I'm super excited about this season because I am all about healing and doing the work so that way we can heal and identify what the root issue is. So these topics really excite me. And so I can't wait to get started.
Awesome. Thank you. And Keisha, how you been? How was your holidays? What's going on?
Holidays have been very, very good. This week has been a little tough work-wise, but overall it's been okay. I am definitely looking forward to this season, wanting to dig a little deeper in the rim of relationships and learning what for healing, what that looks like for other people. I know what it looks like for me, but just learning what it looks like for other people and just digging a little bit deeper in the relationship rims of understanding the dynamics in relationships.
Outstanding. I'm excited because we're going to be talking about healing and all that stuff, and that's kind of our wheelhouse. My holidays, not a holiday person, so I'm just glad they're over. We survived it, and we're in a whole nother year. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into what we're talking about today, which is, when do you know it's the right time to do the work? The work, that personal growth, the healing, everything that comes with therapy, counseling, and all that wonderful stuff. So when we talk about counseling, therapy, healing, personal growth, like, a lot of people have different definitions for it, right? So I'm going to go around and find out, like, what is y'all's definition for healing or therapy or personal growth? Like, for you, how would you conceptualize that into a paragraph or a description? I'm going to start with you first, Chris. If somebody said, hey, explain to me what your definition of healing or therapy and all that stuff, what does that look like to you? What would you say?
Healing initially is just understanding what has happened and then wanting to move on from that. And then also with the healing is, okay, what comes next with that, and going on, let's say, when we're talking about relationships, and like sometimes people will jump from one relationship to the next one and then run into the same problem that they had in the previous relationship, and then they just find themselves in that same cycle of continuing, hey, meet somebody, it's all right, it doesn't work, and then you just keep doing that, and they never give them time to just step away and just really look at what's going on and seeing, hey, this is what maybe I need to work on. Instead of, I think a lot of times what we do is we blame other people. We blame it. It's always somebody else's fault. And I think once you sit back and you see and you think about what it is that you are doing personally, that's when the healing starts. And I can speak personally from my experiences. That's kind of what I've dealt with.
All right. Thank you. How about you, Nicole? What comes to your mind when somebody says, okay, it's time for me to do the work? What to you is the work?
For me, it was 1000% self-discovery. And it was taking a look at myself and figuring out what my issues were, what are my, what am I good at? What am I lacking? What are my holes? Where am I not aware of my behaviors and my words? And then kind of taking a deep dive into that and figuring out, why am I the way I am? What causes me to speak the way that I speak, to receive information in the manner that I receive, and how I am looking at the world, whether it be through the eyes of like a trauma lens or a healed lens, and figuring out how is the best way for me to maneuver through these situations that were either painful or just more growth opportunities. And then doing the work is definitely defining those things. So that way, when I come across the situations again, I know in a healthy manner, I'm looking at the situation in a healthy manner. And my definitions, I can check with my definition, is this or is this good, bad, healthy, helping me or not, and then make better choices in the future when those types of situations come again. So for me, that's the work. And then that's the proof for me that I am growing through my lessons that have been presented.
Outstanding. Thank you for that. And Keisha, now keeping our jargon out of it, right? Keeping our therapy jargon out of it. In your own words, like, what is it to do the work when somebody is saying they need therapy or counseling or whatever that is for them? What would that look like to you in your definition?
Ready to do the work for me would look like change, without putting the jargon in there. Change is pretty much when you're tired of dealing with what you're dealing with and you want to feel better. It's almost like having a broken leg and not going to the doctor, and it's still aching and paining. And you're at the point where, listen, I want this pain to go. So just describing it, I'm ready to heal. I'm ready to get past this. So when going to the doctor to figure out how can my leg heal that's been broken, and getting that cast on your leg and getting all this treatment is just like going for therapy. I'm ready to heal. I'm ready to put it in the work. So first, healing has to start with that person acknowledging that something is wrong and they're ready for that change. So I always connect healing with change. So that's my definition.
Right. And I'm going to co-sign on what you said. For me, it's more of a situation where the fear or the pain of staying where you're at becomes greater than the fear of change, right? Because a lot of people might know they are ready or they need to do the work, but they're scared of opening up a whole can of, I don't know, like, if I let all this out, how am I going to live through it? I know for trauma, and again, not trying to pull work too much into it, but when you have to heal, when there's a trauma aspect, you have to face the trauma. Right. And for some people, that could be more terrifying than living in the pain, right? It's kind of like, well, I might have night terrors and I might freaking have OCD issues. I might not trust people, but I'd rather deal with that than facing the trauma that happened to me so many years ago, right? So it gets to the point of the uncomfortableness of just being in pain becomes greater than that fear of something different. So with that being said, we kind of hinted on it already, Was there a time, and if we're going to be transparent, I'll speak for myself. You guys can kind of determine if you want to share or not. But I've gone to a therapist. I mean, anybody who's in mental health, there as a practitioner should definitely have their own therapist. Like, it should be a given. But when did you know you needed to do work on yourself? Like, I can start it off, but I'm not. When did you know you needed to do work? And I'm going to start with Chris. Like, Chris, when did you know that, you know what, I need to do something about what's going on here? And what was that thing that facilitated that?
Well, I know as far as the thing with me, it's like what I had been doing that I thought was working, it wasn't. And then I just felt myself in its pattern, thinking that everything was okay. And it wasn't. And it just turned out that it wasn't. And it was like I was basically masking it for so long. And then it got to the point where it just became so overwhelming. And I was like, hey, well, it was almost, and I hate to say this, but it was almost like I got to like, it was like my last resort. Like, hey, I got to talk to somebody and talk to somebody professionally. It's not talking to a close friend or family member, talking to somebody professionally and just finding everything out. And I mean, I know it, I mean, it's helped me a whole lot. I mean, I know I can tell the difference in my relationships with different people, and other people as well have seen the changes in me with my relationships with them and others as well. So it's just getting to the point where I know with me, it was like, hey, I've tried everything else. It hadn't worked. Let me go ahead and do this. And it was something that had been presented to me in the past, but I had fought it and like, nah, like, but I finally decided to do it.
Awesome. So you're basically saying it wasn't necessarily a thing, but you just felt that, okay, it's time. So it was your own decision making, not so much an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was maybe a few issues, but I was like, hey, look, man, it became to the point where it's like, hey, I can't do this on my own. I've tried to do it or try to cope with it or handle it myself, but I need professional help. Like, I need somebody else to talk to get through, help me get through whatever it was I was going through.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And how about you, Nicole? And again, you can be as transparent as you want to be or you don't want to be about your own journey. But if, give us an example on when it might be time for someone to say, you know what, I might need to talk to somebody.
Well, I will share. This is the first time that I've shared this on this podcast. And it's the first time I've actually shared this story. But one of my daughters was in about fourth grade and she was in therapy. And during the therapy session, she was presented with cards that show the emotion. So like a sad face or a happy face or an angry face. And my fourth grade child could not identify the emotion of happy or sad or mad. And I was unaware of this. And the therapist said that my daughter has a hard time identifying the emotions because she hasn't had the emotions displayed for her. So she didn't know or have that lesson. And so I just thought, oh, okay, we're just going to teach her like this is what happy looks like. And then the therapist said that probably because I haven't been displaying my emotions for my children to learn about. And so that kind of took me by surprise. Like, I had to be more reflective on my own behavior because I was in mom mode, work mode. I was not properly displaying sad, happy, like these are the things you do when you're sad. So I took a deep dive into emotions and what they look like and being okay, just based on the fact that I didn't want my children to suffer, not knowing what these emotions look like and a proper way to handle them and a proper way to process them. So for me to experience that, I knew that I needed some help. And so I went and I got therapy and it has been amazing for me. And then I went above and beyond and became an emotional intelligence consultant. So I'm certified now that I know how to process them in a healthy manner.
That's awesome. And thank you for sharing that, that part of your journey with us. And that would be kind of an eye-opening experience, right? To kind of see it in an indirect way. All right, Keisha, how about you?
I was actually attending a seminar, and the speaker was talking about kind of giving a little rundown of some trauma they encountered. And he was talking about their relationship with their father. And I don't know. In my mind, I kind of like blocked him out. The last time I saw my dad alive, I was 9 years old, and he died when I was 21. So as she was talking, it kind of like hit me how much not having my father active in my life impacted my life at that point, like up to that point. And it just felt like somebody punched me in the gut, like it took my breath away. And I ran out of the room, and I needed to get outside to get some air. And I just started screaming. It was almost like something was locked inside, and I needed that door for the healing needed to be open. But first I had to acknowledge, and I was able to pinpoint why and how I became the woman that I am now. Not that I'm a bad person, but just some challenges that I went through in life. I do believe it was because of that. And so when that happened, I knew it was something that I needed to address with another therapist. And that led me to go into counseling and just addressing some things.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Sharing that part of your journey. For me, a sensitive Pisces, so my journey started back when I was in middle school with my first experience with a counselor. It was actually, going to a Catholic school. I don't even know how this happened. I wouldn't even count it as a part of the journey. Somebody, a teacher or somebody asked if I was going to hurt myself, how would I do it? It felt like entrapment now that I think about it. And I said, I would take some pills and just go to sleep. Well, they called my mom, and the next thing I knew, I was in the office with the therapist, and I'm like, I don't even know why I'm here. So that was my first experience of therapy, right? And it was just weird because I was like, I asked a question. I was 13 at the time, and the lady said, if you were going to hurt yourself, how would you do it? And I just answered her. It was like I wasn't thinking about it. But that was my first experience, and it was more of not understanding what the purpose was of this person who I'm supposed to tell stuff to. And not just that, it was, if I tell this person stuff, they're going to go back and tell my mom, right? So it's kind of like, I don't even know if I should trust this person. So now it goes into the whole misconception of distrust with mental health. My real, I guess, therapeutic experience I had was when I was in college, and I was in an abusive relationship, and a part of the intervention, I guess I would say, was I had to go talk to a counselor who knew nothing about domestic violence. He knew nothing about trauma. His idea was, maybe you guys just need to talk more. And I'm like, well, being pinned down and strangled kind of makes it really difficult to have a conversation. And that just goes to making sure that you are with a therapist who is trained in certain things, right? So that was my second experience, which really wasn't a positive one either. I would say the very first positive experience I had with a therapist was when I was going through marriage counseling, and I bumped up into a therapist who really was very direct, who didn't take my sarcasm, who didn't allow me to be a smartass during the session. And I respected that. Because I know for myself, and Keisha can probably speak to it too, it's hard for people who do therapy to go to therapy. At least for me, because you think you know every damn thing. So the person's trying to help you, and you're like, I wouldn't have said it that way. I wouldn't have said it that way. I wouldn't have gave her that type of homework. I wouldn't have, you know what I'm saying? So you're not even participating in therapy. You're just cutting it down. So it took, for me to know when it was time, it took an honest conversation of, there's some personality traits that I had that I didn't like, and I knew I needed to do the work to get around them. But it wasn't a therapist who told me, it was people who were closest to me. You know what I'm saying? Like Nicole and Keisha, like these two individuals have been able to highlight personality behaviors I have that probably aren't the best when you're talking about building relationships. Like, I will ghost out in a heartbeat, like so fast. I disappear and I won't be seen again, like forever. And that's probably not healthy. So, I mean, it was more of looking at my own personality behaviors and putting those behaviors on other people. And I'm like, would you want that to happen to you? Would you want that person or somebody to do that to you? And realizing that you have to check in with your blind spots, right? You have to check in with your blind spots. So what are some challenges though that you have to overcome? You know, like for me, I had to overcome the distrust of therapy. I had to overcome the fact that I actually needed it. You know, there's that piece of where you have to be vulnerable enough with yourself to say, I might need to talk to somebody. But what are some other challenges if you guys had to overcome where you had to really get honest with yourself before you actually took it seriously? Because there's one thing to go to therapy, but there's another thing to do it and take it seriously, right? Because you got people who can go therapy all day and play the game. And if you're not taking it seriously, then what's the point? So what are some challenges that you had to overcome or that people might have to overcome in general if they want to proceed in that journey? So I'm going to start with you, Chris.
I know, speaking of myself, is just pride and putting my pride to the side and getting to the point where being able to accept that I may not be doing as well as I thought I was doing. And people will tell me, hey, well, look, man, you might need to do this and do that. But I'm just putting it, like I say, just getting rid of my pride and just willing to accept the advice and talking to somebody and just seeking the help. Because I mean, a lot of times as a man and as men, we're put in a place where we're not asked to speak of things that we're going on. We just push it to the side or just pile other things on top of it and not worry about it and just keep trucking forward. But you get to a point where you just, enough is enough and you can't really move forward until you've gotten rid of all of that. So I know as far as me, I would say is just getting rid of, I mean, it's like getting rid of the pride, but just knowing when to let go of my pride. And then for others, it's maybe just being willing to listen to what it is, being willing to listen to any advice that's given to you.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's kind of where I struggle because it's like, I'm not going to say I have a tendency to feel like I know every damn thing, but sometimes don't you do it, Keisha? Sometimes I just feel maybe there might be a different way, a better way. And I have to listen to somebody else and trust that they're doing or saying the right thing that's going to be more effective for my growth. But it's hard. That's hard. How about you, Nicole? Are there any challenges that you experienced or that are ones that you can kind of think of that might cause somebody to delay going to seek help?
For me, it was fear. I had definitely grew up with my issue and I didn't realize it was an issue until I went to therapy. And so my fear presented as I can't go to therapy because I'm the sole provider of my children and I'll be pulling resources, time, energy, and effort away from them. And what if I have a breakdown in therapy and I'm not able to recover and all the other scary things that you use as an excuse to not go. And then eventually, like now that I'm on the other side of therapy, I can see that that was fear of uncovering what the real issue is, the root of the problem. And it probably showing up much uglier than I originally thought. But, it's like a wound. You got to get all the infection out before the healing can start. And now that I'm on the other side, I can see exactly that's what was going on. I was fearful of what was in the wound. But it was so worth it.
That's exactly right. And that was an amazing analogy. Yeah. And sometimes it's scary to find out how deep that wound goes, right? So, yeah. How about you, Keisha? What are some challenges that you had or that you feel some people might have when they start therapy?
Feeling the shame of what they've been through, as well as opening up wounds that's suppressed. Sometimes people don't want to feel that pain, so they suppress it in their mind. And then certain situations will cause it to surface. So just the thought of, you know how you would talk to somebody and be like, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to deal with that. And every time you get close to addressing, it's like, I don't want to deal with that, because it hurts to open up that wound, you know, kind of like what Nicole was saying, to get all the infection out of it, you got to open it up. And if it start to get the top layer of healing, but it's not healed, it's still pain up under there. So you got to open that sucker up and get to the bottom. So, you know, when people suppress things in therapy, it's hard when you got to open that wound back up. So that's what I think.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, that I would say for me that's my biggest challenge, because it's like you have developed behaviors to survive. Whatever you went through, right? You've developed certain behaviors to survive it, to live with it, right? And it's like, okay, well, I got this far and I'm okay, but are you really okay? You know what I'm saying? So, and then it's like, well, I really don't want to talk about that anymore. And I know you can relate to it too, Keisha, where you start sessions with people and they're fine the first few sessions because you're at that surface level. But as soon as you start getting deep, when you start hitting issues people don't want you to see, it's like, oh, I got to reschedule. Oh, I can't. Like, I ain't gonna lie. Running is what I do. I bounced on a couple therapists because it was like, oh, you getting too close. Like, we did not say we were talking about that. So I'm gonna have to reschedule indefinitely. And but it gets to the point where you have to say, all right, enough's enough. This is what happened to me. I'm speaking specifically with trauma. This is what happened to me. This is not who I am. And I gotta really get to the point of getting positive behaviors so I can really heal versus surviving. Right? We don't want to just survive. So
be ready for the change. If you're not ready for the change, therapy will never work. You have to be ready for it and willing to go through the process.
That's a great segue, because the next question I have is, how do you know when you're not ready? Because there's a difference. There's been a couple times where I have not been ready. Like I just said, when it was getting too close to what occurred, then I was out. Nope, I'm not paying you to cause me to talk about this. So how do you know when you're not ready? And when you're not ready, like, how do you resolve that? So I'm gonna start with you, Chris. How do you know when you're not ready?
When you're not ready, you just continuing to fight it. Now, I know the first session that I was in, and it was a few before, and it's like, just get through it. And the whole time, every time I would talk, and then the therapist would speak on things, and I'm just fighting the therapist on, hey, look, you're not going to tell me about this, or I don't want to hear that. You're not really listening to what they're saying. You're just fighting it. And you get to the point where you haven't accepted what is going on yet. So you're just fighting it and you just putting it up and putting it up. So, I would say that's when you're not ready for it. So, it just takes time. And almost you get wore out from it. And then you just like, hey, look, man, it's like you have no more fight in you. And then that's when it really starts getting through to you. Well, I know that's what happened with me.
Right. Great examples. And thank you for sharing that too. And what about you, Nicole? What are some indicators when you're not ready to start this part of your journey?
So for me, I kind of backed into the therapy. One, I didn't realize I had a problem. And then two, I was there to figure out the emotions, not realizing like what that really meant. So I was just ready to like, I need to teach my daughter how to receive these emotions. I wasn't really ready for everything else that came with it. But now that I'm on the other side of a lot of this work, what I can recognize in others is they're not ready when everything else is everybody else's problem. Like when it's, they have zero part to play in whatever situation, and it's 1000% the other person's fault. They're not ready. You're ready when you're ready to see be accountable and be aware of your part that you played in whatever situation, and start learning about how you can make yourself better. So that way you're not doing those behaviors moving forward. So when it's everybody else's fault, you're not ready.
I agree with that. That accountability is huge, is huge. And when I'm working with abuse victims and they're saying, well, I want us to fix this. Is it possible? And it's always like, do they take accountability for their actions? If they're still blaming you, nothing you're going to do or say is going to get this person to see it differently. So I agree 2000%. How about you, Keisha?
Just to add on to what I was saying, lack of ownership, accountability, all of that would be signs that a person is not ready. Talking around the situation, getting upset when the therapist is direct and get you, really, really close pinpointing some things, getting up, walking out, rescheduling, all of those are signs that a person is not ready.
Yeah, the good old walkout. Ooh, that's when they salty.
Yeah.
That's when they salty.
And they don't just walk out, they got to push something.
They got to push something. You got to kick a chair. The hell? The chair's in my way.
Right.
I'm sorry. That's not funny. So yeah, you have to be ready. You have to be ready for it to be successful, right? Now, what are ways to maintain it? So, okay, we've decided to do the work, right? You're going in, you're being consistent, you're facing your wounding, but how do you maintain it? Because it's an ongoing process, right? It's not a one and done. So what are some ways that you would suggest to people, or what's been successful for you to maintain that work as you move through this process? And I'm starting with you, Chris.
Well, one way that I've maintained it is just talking to people. Might not talk about exactly what I've been through, but just talking to them about, hey, I had this going on, and I went and talked to somebody, and then just letting people know about how helpful it was for me. And then I've had individuals that I've talked to that they've then seeked therapy and counseling, and it's helped them out. So it's almost therapeutic to kind of like pass it forward or pay it forward, as you tell someone about your experience. And then with you showing that almost vulnerability, talking to them about it, then they go seek it, and then you guys can kind of connect with it. And you might not share exactly what went on during your time there, but you do have that connection of, hey, like I got help doing this, they got help, and then you just pass it along like that. So I know I've had several conversations with different people, let them know what happened with me, and it's helped me out a lot. Being able just to continue to talk about it, not only just talking with the therapist.
Awesome. And that's some great tips for people as well. And what about you, Nicole? What are ways that you maintain your journey and everything that you've experienced through therapy, or you've seen other people?
I do a few things. I am that woman that always has some type of self-help book that I'm diving deep in, whether it be about boundaries or whatever type of emotional thing. I'm always looking and reading more about it. And then I've also started a business behind it. And then I've also become more self-aware of the experiences that I have. My life experience kind of reflects back the work that I either have done or need to do. So my self-awareness, like if I get involved with friends that are emotionally unavailable, then I usually check into my, how emotionally available am I being for these particular situations? So my level of self-awareness, as I go through my experience, and then reflecting on my own behavior, and then reading the books.
What are some ways that you have maintained the work that you've done throughout this journey through your therapeutic healing?
I've surrounded myself around supportive people. Sometimes when going through therapy, you have to look at the friends that you have around you. And that's, at times you may have to, readjust yourself, step back from some folks, probably make some new friends that's more supportive. And if you can't just make friends that's supportive, join some support groups. So even beyond therapy, while you're in therapy, or even when you're done with therapy, make sure you have some support groups. One mistake a lot of people make is when they feel like, I got over that. I was able to talk about it. I feel like I'm healed and I'm done. If your therapist is telling you, I think we need to put in a little bit more work, trust that. I've had a lot of people who've came to me for therapy, and just because we had a really, really good session or two, they felt like, I'm good, I don't need any more. And in all of my hearts of hearts, I felt like we're just getting really started. There's more. And then many times they will return because they realize, it is more. So I would say surround yourself with positive people and join some support groups to help you.
And I'm going to I definitely say the support team, right? Now, as an introvert, I don't do good with support groups at all. I would just sit there and stare at people and judge. Like, I'm just going to be for real. Like, I would be like, damn, your junk is messed up. So I would not be a good person for a support group, but support people for me is how I've maintained. And not just having anybody like you have. For me, I need people who are honest. Like, I need people who will package it in a way that I'm not going to automatically push it away, right? Because I can be sensitive, even though I act like I don't, but I'm a Pisces and it happens. So, when Nicole or Keisha goes, Michelle, I love you, but there's always the but. You're like, oh boy, but I know what they're saying is because they care. Because I have a tendency to fall into a black pit and you won't hear from me because I'm trying to figure it out on my own. And I've had to learn that that's not helpful. Shutting people out, and this is for anybody who's listening, if your mechanism to deal with crap is shutting people out, that's not helpful. Because you're sitting with the issue and you're ruminating on it over and over again and not getting any outside information. And that's what, I call it looping. It's not a fun situation because I will shut somebody out for weeks at a time. I think Keisha will say for years at a time. And it's not because I want to, it's just the way I used to deal with my issues. But now it's a situation where after learning about the whole process, somebody will come to me and be like, are you okay? Like, I haven't heard from you in a week or so. What's going on? And then it kind of pulls me out to say, oh, yeah, I'm going through something and this is what it is. So for me, the maintaining is finding people you trust and knowing that they have your best interest at heart and that you can be safe with them. So that was what was important for me. So hopefully all these suggestions that we said will help if you are in therapy or thinking about therapy. But if you're kind of on the fence, knowing that you need help, saying, thinking that you're ready to make that next step, what are some steps? We're going to kind of give you some indicators or things that you can do to kind of push you a little bit closer to that goal. So, Chris, if somebody that you knew was kind of sitting on the fence, if somebody you knew was like, you know what, I really think I need to do something, I just don't know what it is, what information or support would you tell them or give them?
Just first, like maybe talking with them, just seeing if they know or they understand like what it is. Because I think first and foremost is like understanding like what's going on, or maybe recognizing what the issue or problem is. And I think once you kind of figure out what the issue or problem is, you can kind of move forward to working to the solution. Because if you're trying to figure out a solution and don't know what the problem is, it's almost like hustling backwards and you're not really knowing what it is that you're seeking something, but not knowing exactly what you're seeking. So I would just say, like, if they know or they can figure out what that problem that they have or what the issue is, then they can work to get resolution for that.
Right. Awesome information and insight. And what about you, Nicole? What are some steps that you would suggest for somebody to get started on this journey?
Like I keep saying, self-awareness is so important. Like, get curious about the things that you do and the behaviors that you display and the things that you think about, and wonder like what if it's, extreme, then why is it extreme? Practice the pause during those types of situations, which is like not responding, sitting back and think about your response first, and then go deeper. Like, why am I responding like this? Why does this trigger me? Why does this bother me? Get curious about yourself and look into it for yourself. And that, if anything, if there's no answers come up, then the answer usually is to go find help with an outside source.
Absolutely. And what about you, Keisha? What are some steps that you would suggest for somebody who's thinking about taking this step forward?
I would suggest them just taking that leap of faith and making that appointment. Go, and if you don't feel that connection with that therapist, go to another one. But even before if they're at that point of making that step, I think they've already did some self-reflection. I think they did some soul searching, and the reasoning for them going to therapists are the things that they're looking at. This is what's affecting them in some type of way. And so I think they're at that point where they know it's an issue. So I would say just make that appointment and go. Just take a leap of faith and go. And if you don't make a connection with that therapist, try another one. Just don't give up if one doesn't work out for you.
Right. Now, I will say this because I'm about being honest and balanced here, right? There's going to be individuals listening saying, first of all, I can't afford it. All right. Let's be honest. If you don't have insurance, some insurance you can't, it's not included, but you need the help. And that's some of the challenges that I see in the community, where I'll work with people. I've done so much pro bono work with individuals who just need help, but they can't afford to get it. So there are opportunities and options out there for individuals who might be listening saying, well, yeah, I need to do this. I need help, but where do I go if I don't have insurance, if I don't have the money, or if there's no programs available? I would say first, reach out to me, because I will get you the information that you need. The fact that you are standing in the space to admit that it's time for you to make a change, that speaks volumes, okay? That first speaks volumes. I don't want anybody listening to say, well, yeah, I know I need help, but where do I go? And then there's a shortage of therapists who look like us. I mean, that's the only reason I'm getting my ass kicked in a doctorate program right now, is because there's such a shortage of therapists who look like us. And there's a comfort level when I can look at my therapist, and she might not know my story, but there's some shared historical elements where I can make a statement and she'll understand what I'm saying without not, knowing all the nuances and details of my life. Here's an example of the importance of having a therapist who understands you. So I'm going to ask the three of you. If you had a black female, African-American female in front of you, right? You guys are talking, and she starts patting her head. She starts patting her head like this, and she's still talking, but she's patting her head like this. What would you think was going on? Right? I know you know, Keisha. Thank you. I know you know, Keisha.
I do all the time. All the time.
Okay. All right. That's the exact answer I was gonna have, but I didn't want to answer it. I thought that was gonna be the wrong answer.
No,
okay,
that's the answer.
I'm glad. Okay, all right.
That is the answer.
Hey.
Now here's the issue. Here was the issue, though. She had a white therapist who wrote down that she had tics, and that was like an involuntary motion she was doing. Like, she wrote that as a mental health symptom because she did not understand that she was itching her head. Her
TD. That's TD. Mm-hmm.
So that's just an example, a far out example, but it happened. And I'm looking and I'm like, what do you mean this is a symptom of yada yada? And she said, well, she was constantly tapping her head. And I'm like, because her head was itching. And she was like, what do you mean? And I had to educate her. So there's some responsibility on the side of the therapist too. You know what I'm saying? So it's a back and forth conversation. But my whole thing is, if I wasn't there to explain that to that therapist, she might have got a misdiagnosis, right? So There's a reason why people feel comfortable, talking to people who look like them. And then, there's some people who don't, and there's some people who don't care. But at the end of the day, if you feel you need help and you need help finding somebody, let us know. That's the bottom line. Let us know. Don't allow your struggle to continue because you don't know where to go to seek help. So, and when we're saying therapists, a lot of our examples have been licensed therapists, counselors, and things of that nature. There's different ways for you to get therapy, but my best therapy comes through creativity. When I'm painting, when I'm creating, the most healing I've ever done was not in talk therapy. So open your mind and allow yourself to express what you're feeling, to understand where those emotions are coming from, and to give yourself permission to heal. And that's kind of what our focus is. So that's going to wrap up the first episode of season 3, walking into that path of healing and making sure that we're all taking care of one another and keep, checking each other's 6. If you don't have any military background, checking your 6 is just watching each other's backs. And that's kind of one of the reasons why this podcast I feel is so important. So before we close out, I'm going to go around and let anybody give any words of suggestions, advice, empowerment, encouragement for individuals who might be listening and wanting to go ahead and start that journey. So I'm going to go back the other direction. I'm going to start with Keisha. So if somebody's listening right now and they're kind of sitting on the fence, what would you tell them?
This is your now season. And that's something that I'm holding on personally for myself. So make this year the start of something beautiful. So in your now season, you owe it to yourself to do what's necessary to get the healing that you deserve so that you can continue to grow, blossom, and move on in life.
Awesome.
So that's my advice.
Thank you. How about you, Nicole?
I would say that stagnation is preventing your growth. This is only an experience. You won't be in this position after therapy. So I would recommend going through it, learning through it, and growing through it, and actually, progressing your life in a positive direction if you have a positive experience with a therapist. If not, it's another learning lesson. You've learned that doesn't work for you, and you can find a modality, but you won't learn these things unless you go through the experience. So I encourage you to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. And what about you, Chris? What would you give any words of advice and encouragement for somebody who feels that they're ready, but they just need that little extra push?
Okay, my advice would be directly towards the fellas, just knowing, hey, it's nothing wrong with talking about your feelings and just letting everything, don't hold the stuff in, let it out, because holding it in and suppressing it is only going to cause more issues over time. So just maybe finding the right person or people to let it talk to about it, and it's going to make you feel much better. They may not have an answer for you, but sometimes just talking and getting it out there, how you're feeling, that sometimes can help you a lot more. I mean, they may not have an answer for you, but just talk about it to get it out your mind, get it out your system, and you'll feel a little bit better until you're able to get to the point where you get the solutions for it. So like I said, I mean, a lot of times the man thing is, hey, just suck it up and deal with it. Nah, we need to move past that. That doesn't work. That does not work.
That absolutely doesn't work, and that impacts relationships, it impacts families, it impacts children. And that's what I would look at too. It's not just about you. Your behaviors that you have developed to survive whatever it is that you survived can be having negative impacts on your family, on your friends. So if you need that one additional push, look at the people around you who love you. Look at the people who, when you do certain things, they look at you a certain way, or the ones who are exhausted because you just won't make that step to the next level, right? Look at everybody who you care about, because your behaviors impacts all of them. So if you can't do it for yourself, which you should, and that's the best reason too, look around you and find different people in your life that you care about to do it for them as well. So on that note, we're closing out episode 1, season 3. We're happy to be back, and we're excited to see all the new things that we're going to be bringing your way. Check us out on the new website, which is still the same link, www.thelookingglass.fans, but there's a ton of stuff on there. And I'm not going to tell you what it is, so you got to go look and find out. But we're excited for all the new stuff that's on there and all the new things going on and our new co-pilot, Chris. So we'll see how long he can deal with it. But in the meantime, you guys take care, stay safe, and be well.